didn't understand it. Let me start by sometimes the most powerful message you can send is silence. Not anger, not shooting, not chasing, just silence. And when that silence shows up where attention used to be, something interesting starts happening inside a man's mind. See, people think men are simple. They think we just move on, don't think much, don't deeply. But the truth is, when someone who used to show up suddenly stops reaching out, it flips a switch in a man's head. And today, I want to talk about 6 powerful things that start happening inside a man's mind when you stop reaching out. Curiosity is one of the most powerful psychological reactions in the human mind, and it often begins the moment a familiar pattern suddenly changes. When a man becomes used to someone reaching out, sending messages, checking in, or simply showing consistent attention, his mind quietly accepts that behavior is normal. It becomes part of his routine. But when that routine suddenly disappears and the messages stop coming, something usual happens inside his mind. The silence breaks the pattern, and the brain immediately begins searching for answers. At first, it may seem like a small thing. He might casually notice that he hasn't heard from you. But the longer the silence lasts, the more his thoughts start circling around the same question. Why? The human mind naturally dislikes unanswered questions, so curiosity begins to grow stronger. He may check his phone more often than usual, wondering if he missed a message. He may think back to the last conversation, trying to remember if something he said could have caused a sudden distance. Curiosity works because uncertainty creates mental tension. When everything is predictable, the mind relaxes. But when something unexpected happens, like someone who used to reach out suddenly going quiet, the brain becomes alert. It starts paying closer attention. This is when he may begin replaying past interactions, remembering the laughter, the conversations, and the moments that felt ordinary but now feel more significant. The interesting part is that curiosity often leads to emotional awareness. When someone is always present, their presence can sometimes be taken for granted without realizing it. But when that presence disappears, even temporarily, the mind begins to recognize the value of what was there. He might start noticing how different his day feels without those messages or conversations. The absence creates a space, and in that space, curiosity continues to grow. As curiosity grows, attention grows with it. Suddenly, he is thinking about you more often than before. He might wonder what you are doing, who you are spending time with, or whether something in your life has changed. The mystery begins to pull his focus toward you because the human mind naturally wants to solve puzzles and fill in missing pieces. What started as a simple silence can slowly turn into a powerful mental question that refuses to fade away. And the more unanswered the question remains, the more curiosity deepens, keeping your presence alive in his thoughts even when you are not the one reaching out anymore. When you stop reaching out, something subtle yet powerful begins to shift inside a man's mind. Your value starts to rise. Human nature has a tendency to overlook what feels constantly available. When someone is always present, always responding first, always checking in, the mind can slowly begin to see that attention is something ordinary. It becomes part of the routine, something expected rather than appreciated. But the moment that steady attention disappears, the mind suddenly becomes aware of the space that was once filled. At first, he might not immediately recognize what is happening. He may simply notice that things feel different. The familiar messages aren't there anymore. The regular conversations are gone, and the small moments of connection that once happened naturally are suddenly missing. That absence creates a contrast, and contrast is what makes the mind start reevaluating what it once had. When attention becomes limited instead of constant, it begins to feel more valuable. This happens because people often measure importance through availability. If someone is always there without hesitation, the effort behind their presence can easily be overlooked. But when that presence is no longer guaranteed, the mind begins to question why. That question leads to a deeper realization that the attention once given was actually meaningful. A man may begin reflecting on the role you played in his daily life. The conversations that once seemed casual may start to feel more significant in memory. He may remember how your messages brought a sense of comfort or how your attention added energy to his day. The small things he once barely noticed now begin to stand out because they are no longer happening. Value often becomes clear through absence. When someone steps back, it creates space for perspective, He may start comparing how things felt before with how they feel now. Didn't understand it, and that comparison can lead to a growing awareness that what he once had was more special than he realized. The mind starts attaching greater importance to your presence because it is no longer something he can simply expect. As this realization builds, your position in his thoughts can become stronger rather than weaker. Instead of fading away, your absence highlights your importance. What once felt normal now feels rare, and rarity naturally increases perceived value. Through this quick shift, the mind shift begins to see you not just as someone who was always there, as someone whose presence truly mattered. When you stop reaching out, silence creates something many people rarely experience in busy relationships: space. And in that space, reflection begins to take place side of man's. Normally, when communication is constant and life is moving quickly, there is very little time to stop and think deeply about interactions or emotions. Conversations keep flowing, distractions fill the day, and feelings often stay hidden beneath the surface. But when the usual messages and attention suddenly disappear, that quiet gap forces the mind to slow down and think. At first, he might simply notice the change. The phone is quieter, the routine feels different, and the moments that once included you now feel empty. Without new conversations replacing the old ones, the mind naturally begins looking backward instead of forward. This is when reflection starts. He may begin replaying past conversations, remembering the words that were said and the tone in which they were spoken. Small details that once seemed insignificant can suddenly become meaningful. The human mind has a habit of analyzing situations when something feels unresolved. When someone who used to reach out regularly becomes silent, it creates a question that the brain tries to answer. He may start wondering if there was a moment where things shifted. Maybe he remembers a conversation where he could have responded differently, or a situation where he might not have given enough attention. These thoughts can lead him to look more honestly at his own behavior. Reflection often brings awareness. Sometimes people don't fully understand the impact of their actions until they are given time to think without distractions. In the quiet moments, he may begin recognizing the effort you once made to stay connected, the messages, the concern, the consistency. Things that once blended into the background can now stand out clearly in his memory. Silence also removes the comfort of immediate reassurance. When someone is always present, it is easy to assume they will continue to be there. But when that presence suddenly fades, the mind starts evaluating whether something valuable has been lost. This can lead to deeper thoughts about the relationship, the connection, and the role you played in his life. Over time, reflection can shift perspective. What once seemed ordinary may begin to feel meaningful, and what was once overlooked may start to feel important. In that quiet space created by your absence, his mind has the chance to truly examine the connection and recognize the impact you may have had all along. When you stop reaching out, one of the strongest emotions that can quietly appear in a man's mind is the fear of losing you. Human nature often reacts more strongly to the possibility of loss than to the comfort of having something consistently present. When someone is always there, always texting, calling, or checking in, it can create a sense of security. That presence feels stable, almost guaranteed. But when that connection suddenly becomes quiet, the mind begins to sense that something important may no longer be certain. At first, the feeling may show up as simple curiosity, but over time it can turn into a deeper realization. Understand it. The silence introduces a possibility that wasn't there before, the possibility that you may be moving on. Once that thought enters the mind, it can grow quickly. He might start wondering if you have shifted your attention elsewhere, or if someone else is now receiving the energy and interest that you once directed toward him. This possibility can create a sense of urgency inside the mind. When people feel that something valuable might slip away, they begin paying closer attention to it. Understand, he may start thinking about moments you shared together, remembering the conversations, the laughter, and the emotional connection that once felt natural. The idea that those moments might not return can create a powerful emotional reaction. The fear of loss often makes people reevaluate what they previously overlooked. When everything felt secure, he may not have fully recognized how meaningful your presence was. But when that security begins to fade, the mind starts placing greater importance on what could disappear. He may start asking himself questions he never considered before. Did I appreciate her enough? Did I show enough, or did I take something valuable for granted? This internal questioning can create a shift in perspective. Understand, the thought of losing someone often reveals feelings that were not fully acknowledged before. The mind begins to imagine what life might feel like without that person being part of the daily routine. The absence of familiar conversations, attention, and emotional support suddenly feels more significant. As this realization grows, the emotional weight of the situation becomes clearer. What once seemed like a stable connection now feels uncertain, and uncertainty has a way of awakening deeper feelings. Didn't it? The possibility of losing someone important can move a person from comfort to awareness and understand it, making them realize that the connection they once had made meant far more than they understood at the time. When you stop reaching out and constantly seeking attention, something powerful begins to form in a man's mind. Respect is not always built through words or constant effort to prove yourself. In many situations, respect grows from the quiet way someone carries themselves and the boundaries they choose to maintain. When a person shows that they value their own time, energy, and emotional well-being, it sends a strong message without needing to say anything at all. Many people believe that showing more effort, more messages, and more attention will automatically increase their importance in someone's life. But sometimes the opposite happens. When someone is always chasing communication or trying to keep the connection alive alone, it can unintentionally create an imbalance. The other person may begin to feel less pressure to invest effort because the attention keeps coming regardless of what they do. When you stop reaching out and step back, the dynamic begins to change. Your silence can communicate something deeper than words. It shows that your attention is not something that can be taken for granted. It shows that you have enough confidence and self-awareness to protect your energy instead of constantly giving it away. This kind of quiet strength can be very noticeable. A man may start recognizing that you are not someone who will endlessly chase validation or approval. Instead, you demonstrate that you understand your own worth. That realization can shift how he sees you. Rather than viewing your attention as something automatic, he may begin seeing it as something meaningful that required effort and care from your side. Respect often grows when someone realizes that another person has standards and boundaries. It shows that your presence in someone's life is a choice, not a desperate need. This kind of mindset signals emotional maturity and self-respect, and those qualities tend to stand out. When someone notices that you are willing to walk away from situations where effort is not returned, it shows strength of character. Over time, this shift can lead him to see you differently. Instead of thinking of you as someone who will always be there no matter what, he may start recognizing you as someone who values balance, and genuine connection. That realization can change how seriously he views the relationship. Didn't understand it. Respect built in this way is not forced or demanded. It grows naturally from the example you set through your actions. By valuing yourself and refusing to chase what should come naturally, understand that you show that your presence is something meaningful, something that deserves appreciation rather than assumption. When you stop reaching out, often comes a moment when the shift in communication begins to affect a man's actions. After curiosity grows, after reflection begins, and after he starts recognizing the possibility of losing someone important, he may eventually feel the urge to reach out himself. This reaction does not usually happen instantly. It often develops slowly as his mind processes the silence and tries to understand the change in the connection. When someone who used to initiate conversations suddenly stops, it creates a noticeable gap in communication. At first, he may simply observe the silence and assume it is temporary, but as time passes and the familiar messages still do not appear, his attention may gradually turn toward the absence. The mind begins to wonder whether the connection is fading or whether something has shifted emotionally. This uncertainty can motivate action. Humans naturally want clarity when something feels unresolved. When a connection that once felt consistent becomes quiet, the mind often seeks a way to restore understanding. Reaching out becomes one of the simplest ways to close that gap. A message, a call, or even a small check-in can be an attempt to reconnect and understand what has changed. Sometimes this step happens because the silence has created enough time for deeper thoughts to develop. He may have spent days or even weeks thinking about the previous conversations. Stand it, and the moments you shared and the role you played in his daily life, the more those memories surface, the more he may begin to realize that the connection once held a certain value that he didn't fully notice before. When someone reaches out after a period of silence, it can also reflect a shift in effort. Previously, he might have relied on you to keep communication going. But once that familiar effort disappears, the responsibility to reckon may start feeling like his. In that moment, sending a message can feel like the natural response to restore balance. Reaching out is often a sign that the silence created awareness. It shows that the absence of communication was noticed and that the connections still hold some level of importance in his mind. The quiet space gave him time to process thoughts and emotions that might have been overlooked when communication was constant. Sometimes all it takes is a pause in the usual pattern for someone to recognize the effort that once kept the connection alive. And when that realization settles in, it can inspire him to take the first step forward simply because he no longer wants the silence to remain unanswered. Now listen carefully. Silence isn't about playing games. It's not about manipulation or revenge. It's about knowing your worth. When you stop chasing what should naturally meet you halfway, you create space for the truth to reveal itself. If someone values you, they will notice your absence. If someone cares about you, they will feel the distance. And if someone truly wants you in their life, they will make the effort to reach back. Because the strongest message you can send isn't always words. Didn't understand it. Sometimes it's the quiet confidence of knowing you deserve more.